Hello, and welcome to the Montreal Grand Prix here in the Nations Cup. I am Chris Kaplan, your host, and we are here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve on the St. Lawrence River in Montreal. What a fantastic racetrack this is, very well known in the Formula One circles, and we are bringing it here to the Nations Cup. And what a brilliant track this is, and I hope that it'll be entertaining enough for us all, and we'll see, shall we? We'll go straight into the matter of things with Division 2. Before we show the races, let's see what the standings look like going into this race. 4 rounds have been done, and Pato Award leads the driver standings for the Division 2 ahead of Jose Maria Lopez and then Felipe Nasr, all like America's, with De Angelis next, America's hosting the top 4 of the standings. They're just separated by 18 points, there's literally nothing in it. And then further on down, you see Felix Rosenquist is now creeping closer. The current Division 2 champion is ever so close, and it is very, very exciting indeed. And then we go a bit further down the order, Elfyn Ends, Wales, and Paul Rest of Scotland getting in there in the mix. But then going further down, there are drivers like Arthur Leclerc, and both the Portuguese cars would really need to do some improvements going into this race. And then we can also see what the nation standings looks like going into this. Mexico lead the way, much like Pato Award is for the drivers. They are leading for the nations, and Sweden in that top 3. Remember, the top 3 go through to Division 1 at the end of the season. Many rounds to go, however, and there are some teams, again, like Portugal, who feel like compared to last season, they really need to up their game. We can now see what the grid is for the first of the races today, which is the sprint. Paul di Resta leads the way from Felipe Nasr to Arthur Leclerc in 3rd place, Nico Varone and Jose Maria Lopez in 4th and 5th for Argentina. Felix Rosenquist make his charge on points in 6th, with Felipe Albuquerque in Portugal 7th, with Nicolas Latifi for Canada in 8th, with Rafael Marcello for Italy in 9th, with Romain De Angelis in 10th, Antonio Giovinazzi in 11th, Stefan Bicambi 12th, Jakub Spikowski for Poland, who had a very good start to the season. Let's see if we can get some points there in 13th, Sebastian Murray in 14th, with Fatima Ward in 15th, Marcus Ericsson in 16th place, with Pietro Fittipaldi for Brazil 17th, with then Roman Belinsky in 18th, Max Hart 19th, Antonio Felix da Costa 20th, Elfyn Evans for Wales in 21st, first of the South African cars in 22nd, Sheldon van der Linde, followed by Alex Dunn, and then Calvin van der Linde in 24th, with Rafael Villagomez in 25th, and Ella Lloyd in 26th. And for the first race of the day, it is over to Ryan Ferris, the commentator.
It's time for the first race of today here in Montreal, and it's De Resta on pole from Felipe Nasr. It's the sprint race, and when the lights come off, we're racing here in Montreal, and it's a good getaway from Nasr, who jumps in front of De Resta, but De Resta fights back into turn 1, retaking the lead, and there's a big kerfuffle in the background. And it looks like it was possibly the 2 Team Canada cars coming together. Definitely not something on the cars, but here's Sheldon van der Linde, and he's gone off into turn 1. So what has happened there? So big concertina effect into turn 1. It looks like one of the Team Portugal cars, I think, receiving some form of punt midway through the corner, which also caused him to go into van der Linde. And it's Da Costa, so Da Costa is off, he's lost his front wing, so he's going to have to trundle back to the pits. And I don't really know how to take that. I think that would be ruled as a racing incident. But anyway, still looking there, and it just seemed 3 into 1 does not go. But the rest of the field carries on, and De Resta is back in the lead ahead of Nasr. So Nasr, after getting a great getaway, misses out to the Scottish driver. Further on back, you have Jose Maria Lopez in 4th, having a good weekend so far. The two Canada cars having a bit of a lock-up in the background. And Riquelme's just behind these two. But Roman De Angelis hunting down Latifi as they come down into the final chicane for the first time to complete this first lap. And in the background, that's one of the team Poland cars of Smiakowski, who's made a move down the inside and is taking 12th position away from Giovinazzi. Leclerc hanging in there in 3rd position. Not too far away from Nasser. De Resta's starting to check out, and Ella Lloyd with a bit of a lock-up there on the exit of turns 2. She carries on through the S's. De Costa and Van der Linde both in pit lane. So a tough start to Team South Africa with both cars down the back end of the field now. Felipe Albuquerque trying to have a move into the hairpin. Not quite committed enough. As we look back to the two Canadians, I feel maybe getting some team radio sometime soon from De Angelis saying Latifi's holding me up. Back at the front is still Nasser holding on to that 2nd position as De Resta continues to open it that advantage with another fastest lap of the race. But Nasser coming under increasing pressure from Leclerc from behind. Further on back, Riquelme in 10th position. That last points paying position under pressure from Raffaele Marcello. And an engine issue for Max Hart, so it's not going well for Team Ireland at the moment. Marcello sizing up a move into the hairpin, but not quite close enough, but someone who is close enough. And De Angelis finally through on Latifi. So De Angelis has been released to go after Rosenqvist, and he's already gaining on the Swedish driver. Further back here is Jakub Smiakowski off the back of winning the LMP2 division at Le Mans. Hopefully that has brought on a bit of form here, and you can use some of that positive energy to bring that Team Poland car further on through the field. He's just outside the points at the moment. And Calvin van der Linde, South Africa's day seems to be going from bad to worse. There's an electrical issue there. Further on back, it's the two Welsh cars battling for position. It seems as though Wales struggling this weekend after what's been some fairly good and solid performances of recent. Back at the front, and that gap continues to extend by De Resta, but Nasser still coming under pressure from Leclerc. Can Leclerc find a way through? As we look back to Lopez there. Actually, this is Verone, so a couple cars back. So good race so far for Argentina, with a 4th and 6th place at the moment. Further on back, here's Rosenqvist now coming under pressure from De Angelis. Latifi starting to drop a little bit off of these two. Come to the hairpin once again, and here's another issue for Ella Lloyd, just not working out for her, it seems. Now she is coming under pressure from Sheldon van der Linde. Team trying to send positive advice to Nazar. He's definitely strong enough there, and DeResta with a big lock up there into turn 2. And that's definitely not going to help those tyres out. It's going to give him a little bit of a sniff of blood from the likes of Nazar and Leclerc. This is Felipe Leclerc, 5th position at the moment. And for a moment there, I thought that was Nazar going slow, but as a result of that lockup, that gap to the lead, that's a move there for Giovinazzi on Smikowski. So up into 12th. And it's Italy 11th and 12th at the moment. But that lock-up for DeResta has really hampered him, but he's starting to get away again now. It was 1.3 seconds, it's now up to 1.5. Already it's the two Italian cars battling for position into turn 1. Giovinazzi's definitely not hanging about. Marcello's somewhat tucked up behind Latifi, who's catching up onto the back end of De Angelis as well. De Angelis still unable to find a way through on Rosenqvist for that 7th position. But crucially, Rosenqvist starting to lose touch with Verone. Now here's Ricalmi. He's got 2 Team Italia cars bearing down on him for that final points paying position. And down the inside is no. Marcello thought better of it. Back at the front, DeResta has recovered from his mistake there. He's put the gap up to 1.8. But has he taken anything out of his tyres as a result of that? And that's a big lock up there for Rosenqvist. Rosenqvist narrowly avoiding the wall of champions. And has now found himself very much under pressure from the 2 Team Canada cars. And here comes Latifi. So Latifi sends it down the inside of his teammate. And De Angelis, after already getting past his teammate, finds himself looking at the maple leaf one more time. But Rosenqvist very lucky to get away there. It is called the Wall of Champions, and he is Division 2 champion. So I think some of the managers might be saying it'd be quite fitting, but he still lives to fight on for at least one more lap. But back under pressure again, Rosenqvist still hanging on to that 7th position, but further on up the front, Leclerc has managed to close down on Nazar. So after there must have been a mistake from Nasr, because the gap has gone up a second between Di Resta and Nasr. Further on back, we look to Smirkowski in 13th. He's having a bit of a regroup here, as he's now got the two Team Italy cars to deal with one more time. Albuquerque still in an Argentina sandwich, as Giovinazzi a little bit of a difficulty placing the car through turns 8 and 9 there, and finds himself very much under pressure now from Smirkowski. He goes down the inside, and whilst that's going on, Marcello has just picked the pocket of Raquelme for that final points paying position. De Angelis has also managed to get back through on Latifi, so De Angelis up into 8th, and he can now have another go at Rosenqvist. Back at this battle for second position, and Leclerc still unable to find a way through on Felipe Nasr. He might not be fast enough to keep up with Di Resta, but he's definitely fast enough to hold on to this second position at the moment with Leclerc. Smirkowski with a bit of a lock up there, going through 8 and 9. That's going to put him back under pressure now from Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi is going to send it down the inside here into the hairpin, and manages to do so. Meanwhile, Marcello is scampering off up the road after Latifi now. He's back within a second of the Canadian driver. But this is your leader, Di Resta. Now the Scots have already drank Boston dry, and they most likely will drink Dallas dry as well, so dare I say it, if Scotland have a good result here, I think the bars in Canada will be very much running out of beer once again. Here's Nico Varun, who's just starting to tail off a little bit from Felipe Albuquerque. Albuquerque still hanging in there with that 5th, but he's not really made any inroads into Lopez for that 4th. And they're sort of a few car lengths or a couple of seconds off the back of Leclerc, who's still just about staying within touch of Felipe Nasr. So, very promising stuff there from Di Resta. If he can replicate this performance in the feature race later, it's definitely going to be a good day for Scotland. After Leclerc, who's starting to lose touch from Nasr now, it looked as though he was on definitely for the chase and the hunt, but he's dangerously, and indeed he has now, just fallen out of that crucial 1 second between Nasr and Leclerc. Now, these cars don't have DRS, but they benefit the most from the slipstream effect when they're within 1 second of the car in front. Rosenqvist still hanging on to that 7th position. DeAngelis unable to really make the inroads he was able to earlier, and I'm pretty sure he's not going to be best impressed with Latifi's antics earlier. And Latifi will probably argue he's just as right to fight for points and positions as he is. But Rosenquist starting to catch up to Verone, so Verone now under threat for that 6th position. 12 laps of the 18 completed. And De Resta continuing to extend his advantage. 3.4 seconds is the gap to Nasser, and Nasser has well and truly broken the spirit of Leclerc. It's now 1.2 seconds, the gap between himself and Leclerc. And Leclerc's going to have to be careful now that he doesn't fall into the clutches of Lopez, who's gradually closing in on the Monegasque driver. Here's DeAngelis finally making a move. Down the inside he went on Rosenquist. Further on back, we're seeing Elvin Evans here battle with Villagomez. Villagomez, who had a brilliant performance last time out, but it just seems it hasn't quite transferred here in Canada. Most likely, a lot of the time it does come down to setup. Sharon van der Linde making her way through on Ella Lloyd, and that looks like smoke in the distance, and it is. So one of the cars further ahead, I think that was Villagomez possibly, who's just had an engine blowout. It's Elvin Evans. So what has already been a tough day so far for the Welsh driver. He just made a move and was making some form of progress. But disappointing times, at least this weekend, for Team Wales. Hopefully they can do something a little bit better in the feature race, maybe pick some points up later at the back end of the field. Here is Felipe Nasr, whose pace has been fairly consistent actually. He's not, in this second phase of this race, lost too much time to De Resta. De Resta's only really taken a 10th here or there. And I think Lopez must have made a mistake somewhere, because he's fallen a little bit further back from Leclerc. So Leclerc fairly safe. Although he has managed to claw a little bit of time back on Nasr, so are we seeing a bit of a late resurgence from Leclerc to try and get that 2nd position? Further on back, Latifi has managed to make it up into the top 10. Is Roman Belinsky struggling down in 18th position. It's been quite the tough day at the office. Both cars not quite in the points yet. There's still 4 laps to go. And where it seems as though when Smirkowski tries to find his way up into the top 10, he gets battered away by one of the Italian cars. Marcello, who is now closed in on Rosenquist, so Rosenquist's 8th position now is under threat. As we look to DeAngelis, who's closing in on Nico Verone for that 6th position. Back at the front, De Resta. Only a couple of laps left to go. He's nearly got that advantage out to 4 seconds. And Ericsson down in 17th. There's been quite some performance gaps between certain teammates, it seems. Down into the braking zone one more time. De Resta about to cross the line, and there will be 2 laps remaining on what has been a very dominant performance from the Scottish driver. Briefly lost the lead before turn 1, but took it back. And Leclerc trying to find some sort of performance to close in on Nasr, but I don't think he's going to do so. Murray having a bit of a lock up there going into turn 2. Again, struggling there is Murray, down in 15th position when his teammates leading this race. And around the hairpin goes, and who's that? That's Marcello. So Marcello's lost his engine. Out of the points he goes. That promotes Raquelme into the points. And Raquelme's actually managed to pick the pocket of Latifi there, so he's up into 9th. And pulls over, and Marcello, after what was a good run from the 2 Italian cars, comes to abrupt end with only 2 laps remaining. But we're on to the final lap now. De Resta commanding this lead. Nasr still not through. And it's a 4.1 second advantage it is for De Resta at the moment. Nasr fairly comfortable there in P2, and so is Leclerc there in 3rd, although he doesn't want to be making any mistakes because Lopez still not too far behind, but only 1 sector remaining for De Resta as he comes around the hairpin one final time. He's just got the long back straight and the chicane to go. So down to the chicane with a lovely advantage, and he comes out of the final corner and crosses the line to win here in Canada, the sprint race. Nasr holds on to that 2nd position, so does Leclerc in 3rd. And the rest of the field comes streaming through. De Angelis unable to get through on Verone in the end. And is that Giovinazzi? Giovinazzi has an engine blowout just across the line. I'm not sure, I didn't quite catch there whether or not he missed out on points as a result of that. If we look further back, this is Da Costa. Not the most ideal of races, obviously caught up in that turn 1 incident. And it's Kelvin van der Linde who's even further back. Been mostly a test session for the South African. But across the line he comes, and with that we will have confirmation that Paul de Resta has indeed won here ahead of Felipe Nasr, and Arthur Leclerc was 3rd. Jose Maria Lopez was 4th ahead of Felipe Albuquerque. Nico Verone was 6th ahead of Roman De Angelis. Felix Rosenquist was 8th with Stefan Raquelme in 9th, and Nicholas Latifi taking that final point. Jakub Smiakowski was 11th ahead of Paso Ward in 12th, and Sebastian Murray was 13th. Moving further on down, and it was indeed an engine blowout for Giovinazzi that cost him points there, relegating him to 14th in the end across the line. Pietro Fittipaldi was 15th, with Marcus Ericsson 16th, Roman Belinsky in 17th, Rafael Villagomez 18th, Sheldon van der Linde was 19th ahead of Ella Lloyd in 20th, Antonio Felix da Costa, Alex Dunn and Calvin van der Linde, with retirements of Rafael E. Marcello, although he was classified with 2 laps down. Elvin Evans retired with an engine failure, as well as Max Hart. And after that, I will hand you back over to Chris, who will give you the lowdown as we go into the Division 1 sprint.
Well, that's a fantastic performance for Scotland there from Paul di Resta. Very, very good. And Felipe Nasr holding back Arthur Leclerc throughout the whole race. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And then, yeah, Roman De Angelis could have done a bit better, I guess, for him, knowing how quick he is around here. And then Paolo Ward not getting any points for his title charge. Not particularly good, considering Felix Rosenqvist did. And not many retirements in this race compared to races past in this season. There are quite a few, but this time only 2. But yes, we'll see how that fares for the feature. But now we must turn to Division 1. And we can see in that Nick De Vries is leading the championship only by 1 point to Shane van Gisbergen. And then a further 2 points back then is Kevin Estre for France. And Christian Lundgaard, for the previous winner, in 4th. Stoffel van Dorn is in 5th place. And then it's very, very close, even right down to Daniel Ricciardo in 9th place. Is literally 18 points between the top 9. It's absolutely fantastic. Some great performances. There are some drivers that have been a bit lackluster this season though, like for example the 2 German cars. Let's see if they can finally make amends here in Montreal. And Simon Pagenaud, that's the current title defender, only in 20th at 21 points, which is very disappointing for him indeed. And we can see that in the nation standings, New Zealand do lead the way still on 91 points, only 9 ahead of the Netherlands and then 13 ahead of Spain. It's very close, very, very close between the top 5 to be fair. And then there are some teams, again, Germany, look at them in 13th place with only 34 points. They really need to have an answer, otherwise they could be left in the dust. Much like England, and to a degree actually, you could argue, so is the United States of America. But Montreal could bring up so many surprises. We can see what the grid looks like for the sprint for Division 1. Kiwi Kobayashi of Japan leads Carl Kirkwood of the United States in 2nd place, with Sebastian Buemi right behind in 3rd. Stoffel van Dorn in 4th place with Will Power in 5th, with Alex Palou of Spain in 6th. Pascal Wehrlein, the first of the German cars, in 7th place. Kevin Estre in 8th, with Kevin Magnussen in 9th, and then Shane van Gisbergen in 10th. And then 11th place, Christian Lundgaard with Robin Frijns in 12th, Philip Hansen in 13th, Scott Dixon losing in 14th, Simon Pagenaud in 15th, with Chaz Mostert 16th, Daniel Ricciardo 17th, Nick De Vries in 18th, Charles Wirtz at 19th, and then Rast would have been 10th place, but because of a penalty that he had to serve after smacking out Sandy Stuvik in Manawatu, New Zealand, he has to start now in 20th. Yuki Tsunoda in 21st, Yuko Ukachukwu in 22nd, Jake Dennis in 23rd, Louis Delatraz in 24th, Enzo Time-Vitishkul 25th, and Stuvik would have started 21st, but because of a 5-place penalty that he has to serve from an incident at Manawatu as well, he starts at the back of the grid. And then for the first race of Division 1, it is over to Ryan Ferris.
Division 1 race time here in Montreal, and it's Kobayashi on pole with Carl Kirkwood in 2nd position. And when the lights go out, we'll be racing here in Montreal, and it's a good getaway from Kobayashi, but Kirkwood's got an even better getaway as he has taken the lead. But who's this down the inside? And it's 3 into 1, definitely doesn't go there, and that's Sebastian Buemi, who's taken all 3 of them out on the first corner. Now, Sebastian Buemi thought the door was definitely open. But it was a case of 3 into 1 doesn't go. Obviously, Kobayashi trying to outbrake Kirkwood, and Buemi trying to outbrake the 3 of them. So a big logjam caused by that, and Kirkwood still stranded there on the who's going to be last. So that means in the front it's Stoffel van Dorn, Palou and Kevin Estre. And Van Dorn managing to get through turn 1 unscathed and has managed to scamper off up the road already. Nearly a second he has over Palou. But Palou has Kevin Estre for company, and he's having a look down the inside as they come up to the hairpin. And that's P2 for Estre. And it is a penalty there for Sebastian Buemi. So he'll have points added to the licence, and I think what I saw there was a grid penalty, but currently sits there in 7th position. And Estre already going about catching up Van Dorn for position. And it looks like Frein somewhere has found the curb and has lost the wing, so into pit lane comes the Dutchman. And here is Kirkwood already making his way through the field. Rast further on back in 18th position, obviously having to deal with the penalty from last time out. And he has Hugo Ugochukwu behind him for company in P18, but none of this for points, but back at the front. Estre had closed in on Van Dorn. It was half a second, but it's now gone back out to just over 8 tenths. Estre tucked up in the slipstream there of Van Dorn as they come to the final chicane, and they've gapped Palou there. So over a second it is between Estre and Palou. And Estre indeed sets the fastest lap of the race, half a second off of Van Dorn, but Kevin Magnussen actually takes that fastest lap away. So we look further back to the recovering Kobayashi, who's gone back in front of Buemi and is in 6th position. So if he can have any sort of paces, Simon Pagenaud's just taken the fastest lap, and so is Louis Delatraz. So a flurry of fastest laps going on, even though Delatraz is right at the back of the field. And Ugochukwu getting it all wrong there through turns 3 and 4. But just about manages to fight on. And Freins, after pitting for a front wing, doesn't even manage a lap. He's out with a blown engine. So, early retirement there for Freins, but back at the front, as yellow flags are being waved, Estre is continuing to close on Van Dorn for that first position. And he's definitely tucked up in the slipstream. Will he have a move into turn 1? He thought about it, but not quite close enough. And René Rast has lost power now. So Rast out of the race, another engine failure. But Estre all over the back of Van Dorn now. Into the braking zones of 8 and 9, and still Estre unable to find a way through, but he's going to have a good run here as he comes up to the hairpin and he jinks out. Down the inside he comes and takes the lead away from Van Dorn. Now, can Van Dorn respond? But Estre already putting in 7 tenths into Van Dorn. And he looks like he's got the pace to run away with this at the moment. Alex Palou, who's in a bit of no man's land as he tries to catch up onto Van Dorn now. He's a little over a second ahead of Will Power, who's got Van Gisbergen for company. That's the battle for 4th and 5th. Further back, you have Buemi there in 6th, but obviously a penalty lingering over him, so that takes him out of the question. So that means that Kobayashi is up into 6th, essentially. And Van Gisbergen looking to line up Power. And he's definitely gaining here on the Australian, but not quite close enough to go down the inside into the final hairpin, or into the hairpin. So down the long Casino Straight. Can Van Gisbergen close in enough to make a move? And Palou needs to box now, so an issue for Palou. And that's promoted. Oh, nearly contact there. In fact, there may have been contact there between Power and Palou, but Palou is pitting. That's promoted Power up into 3rd. Van Gisbergen's now fighting for a podium position here as he goes down the inside into turn 1 and goes through. So Power, who thought he was onto a winner there, having taken the position, he's quickly snatched off of him, and that's Magnusson into the wall. Only a light brush there, no real damage. But that's going to put him under some form of pressure there from Dixon behind. So here's Kevin Estra. Always worries me with that line that they take into the into the hairpin, as that is Kobayashi now. Sorry, no, that's Buemi going through on Power, so although he has taken it on merit, and that is a sign of potential pace into the next race, he is practically invisible in this one, as the penalty he has will most certainly put him out the points. But Power can only hope that Buemi continues on and potentially messes up Van Gisbergen for that 3rd position. Oh, and that's a big crash there. So what's happened there? That's Magnusson once again looking as if he's got it all wrong on the exit of turns 3 and 4, and is in doing so put Dixon into the wall. So Dixon without a front wing. I don't know if we'll get a replay of that, but as further back, there's Chaz Mostert going down the inside of Lundgaard for 9th position. Magnusson still able to carry on, but Verline has managed to leapfrog the pair of them now. So he finds himself in P7. But a fairly lonely P7 to a degree, as he's got a lot of work to do if he wants to try and catch Kobayashi just in front of him, and that's a lock up there into turn 1 and a lock up there into turn 2, so not a very good start to the lap so far for Verline, who now finds himself under pressure from Kevin Magnusson. Now is Magnusson going to make it through on the bounce? No, I think he's managed to avoid the wall this time. Is Van Dorn unable to hold a candle to Estra. Estra, who is doing similar to what happened in Division 2, and is just disappearing off the road, up the road with a metronomic pace. And Magnusson back under pressure now from Mostert. So Mostert's already gone through on the previous lap on Lundgaard, as we saw, and now he's already mounting the pressure on Magnussen, who is clearly struggling in this sprint race. We look further on back at Stuvik and Enzo Tan, who's being closed in by Palou. Obviously Palou recovering from his early incident. But Van Gisbergen in third position. Can he do anything about Van Dorn up ahead? The gap is around 2.3 seconds. And is continuing to go down. So we look here to Chaz Mostert, who's having a much better time in the car this weekend. Last time out, he struggled quite a lot for pace. But this time, challenging Magnussen for the 8th position. Here's Delatraz making a move down the inside of Jake Dennis for 17th position. Delatraz, who somehow has the fastest lap of the race. But here's Van Gisbergen, who's being closed down, and Mostert having a little bit of an issue there as they come through the kink down into turn 1. And he's now lost touch with Magnussen up ahead and is back under pressure now from Lundgaard, who's got Hansen for company there. Hansen seeing if he can try and pinch a point, as we are currently on lap 10 of 18. Scott Dixon on his recovery sets the fastest lap of the race. Once again, here's Estra. 4.3 seconds is the advantage. He is just driving away, enjoying this car at the moment. As we look back, Alex Palou making a move. And on Sammy Stuvik for 22nd position. Definitely has the pace, and is going to be someone to look out for in the feature race later on. Right on board with your leader, Kevin Estra. And Sonoda's broke the wing. Here's Scott Dixon having all kinds of issues going through the hairpin. So Sonoda pits. So we look to Dixon, who's got an electrical problem, so more trouble for Dixon. Meanwhile, his teammates still trying to hunt down, and as I say that, having more issues going into that chicane. He is gradually closing on Van Dorn. The gap through the last sector, it's 1.2 seconds, so the gap was 2.3 seconds earlier. Now here's Delatraz down the inside of Ugachukwu. That puts him up into 16th position. Daniel Juncker just up ahead. And Will Power struggling through that final chicane, but luckily misses the wall of champions. But Power now finds himself under pressure from Kamui Kobayashi for that 5th position. So Power can't afford any more mistakes here. Kobayashi fresh off the back of winning the Le Mans 24 Hours. So he'll certainly have a spring in his step here in Canada. And he's definitely pressing on power now. Will he have a move now down into the chicane? Not quite close enough, but I think if he can have a good run here out of turns 8 and 9, he could potentially have a move into the hairpin. And he looks to be lining up the move now, but not close enough this time. Just there in the background is Pascal Wehrlein, who's had a fairly lonely race there in 7th position. Not quite had the pace to catch Kobayashi and co, although it seems in this second phase of the race he's been finding a bit more pace. Still back at the front. Estra, 6.5 seconds the advantage. Enjoying his time on the circuit here in Montreal. And probably enjoying the car. He's not been having much luck in the Grand Prix World Series for Onyx, but he's definitely making up for it here for Team France. As we watch the rest of the field stream through, here's Kobayashi, who's fallen off the back now of power, so he must have made a mistake somewhere. And he's now gone into the clutches of Wehrlein. So Wehrlein, after saying he's sort of had a bit of a lonely race so far, finds himself with an opportunity for 6th position. Van Gisbergen still trying to close. Is Delatraz, is that a move on someone? Yes it is. So he's just gone through on Juncker for 15th and seems to be having a good race here, but obviously having to find his way from the back end of the field. Juncker, who's struggled somewhat this season, not had the performances we'd expect from the Spanish driver. Further on back, still trying to hot up as Estra gets it all wrong going through turns 3 and 4. Don't want to be doing that too much, as that's one of the problems here. A lot of the chicanes here tend to have a wall very close to the exit, so not much room or margin for error. But Estra managed to scoop it all up and continues. Van Gisbergen, who's lost a little bit of time to Van Dorn, a few mistakes starting to creep in. He's still trying to close, but Van Dorn starting to respond slightly to Van Gisbergen. Either that or Van Gisbergen's tyres are starting to fall off a bit, and the car for Juncker is broken. 3 laps away from the finish was Juncker. So puncture there. And out of the race goes the Spaniard. Now Wehrlein, whilst all that was going on, has gone through on Kobayashi for 6th position. But we look to Van Gisbergen, who's definitely losing touch now, as Magnussen sends it down the inside of Kobayashi. So Kobayashi must have some sort of issue. He's slowing. I think there's some sort of electrical problem developing there for the Team Japan car. And what was starting as a fairly positive race to start off with before being punted off. Oh, it's a loose wheel. You can see there the wheel. The left front wheel has come undone, and out of the race is Kamui Kobayashi. And Wehrlein's got an issue now, so Wehrlein's having to pit. That's going to promote Magnussen up into 6th. So with a few laps to go, it's all starting to kick off now. That has really shuffled the pack now. Viet's in 10th position now. Here's Ugachukwu. They're in 14th, having all sorts of problems there. Through Virage de Senna. He's just about managing to hang on in front of Jake Dennis. On board with your race leader, who is continuing to extend his advantage. 7.7 seconds it is from him to Van Dorn in second position. And just as I say that, Van Dorn's lost his gearbox. So Van Dorn out, and there's contact there with Van Gisbergen. Somehow Van Gisbergen hasn't had any damage to the front end. Now, Van Gisbergen can afford to lose out here to Buemi. But he can't afford to lose too much time because Power isn't too far behind now. This is the second to last lap of this sprint race. Where we see Van Gisbergen under pressure from Buemi. Buemi, who has a penalty over his head at the moment. And is most likely not going to finish within the points. Further on back, Jake Dennis under pressure from the recovering Kirkwood. Kirkwood, who's done a great job here to pull his way back through the field following the shenanigans on the first corner. Back for this battle for the position on the road. Buemi still hassling Van Gisbergen, possibly hoping that he makes some form of mistake. But this is the last lap. Estra is still your race leader, but he finds himself over 12 seconds ahead of your second place man. And here's Enzo Tan getting it all wrong through the final chicane, just about misses the Wall of Champions. As Pascal Wehrlein sets the fastest lap of the race now. And the engine's failing for Estra. Estra, who's dominated this race, he's 12 seconds up the road now. Can he coast the car home? It's not on fire yet, it's just merely smoking. Can he limp it all the way back? He's just got this straight to go. The final chicane. And this is drama. He had it all in hand, and he still possibly does. Such is the effort that he's managed to put in. He's going to cross the line and win this here with a failing engine. Kevin Estra wins the sprint race here for Division 1 ahead of Van Gisbergen. And what was the advantage? 8 seconds in the end. And Estra definitely a lucky boy there. Van Gisbergen second. It will be Power most likely in third, as the rest of the field comes through. We see the likes of Andy Tan, Wehrlein, Stuvik, and we wait for Sonoda to come across the line, followed by Dixon. And there he is, Scott Dixon, who's had a bit of a day to forget so far. But he crosses the line and finishes, and with that we go to confirmation that Kevin Estra wins here in the Montreal sprint race for Division 1 ahead of Sheldon van der Linde. Will Powell caught third position as a result of Buemi's penalty. Kevin Magnussen was promoted to fourth with Chaz Mostert in fifth. Lundgaard was sixth ahead of Hansen in seventh. Buemi actually did manage to finish within the points there and finished eighth. Joel Wirtz was ninth, with Simon Pagenaud taking the final point there in 10th. De Vries was 11th, Delatraz 12th, and Yuga Chukwu was 13th. Jake Dennis was 14th ahead of the recovering Carl Kirkwood. Alex Palou 16th, Enzo Tan 17th, Pascal Verline 18th, Sandy Suvic 19th, Yuki Tsunoda was 20th ahead of Scott Dixon, and on to the retirements of Stoffel Van Dorn in 22nd, Kamui Kobayashi, Daniel Juncadere, Rene Rast and Robin Freins. So absolute drama at the end of that race, and hopefully that's going to continue on as we go into the feature races.
Well, considering his title position, Kevin Estre has done a fantastic job there in the sprint from 8th to 1st. Absolutely brilliant. It certainly announces himself for the championship. Shane Van Gisbergen is second as well with a very good performance. And yes, a very, very considerable drive. Sebastian Buemi a bit clumsy at the beginning there, with literally the first 3 cars all going off. He will definitely have to serve a 5-place grid penalty for the feature, and let's see how that looks for him. But first we can show the Division 2 feature race. And the grid goes as follows. Roman De Angelis of Canada is starting on pole in Canada, with Manfredo Marcello of Italy in second place, and then the compatriot of De Angelis, Nicolas Latifi, in third place. Let's see if Canada can get some huge points. Philippe Albuquerque in fourth place, Felix Rosenquist in fifth, Jose Maria Lopez in sixth, and Nico Marin in seventh. Arthur Leclerc now starts in eighth place with Felipe Nasr in ninth, with Paul Di Resto alongside him in 10th. Antonio Giovinazzi in 11th, with Stefan Brikelmi in 12th, Jakub Swiatkowski in 13th, Sebastian Murray 14th, Pato Award in 15th, with Marcus Ericsson in 16th, Pietro Fittipaldi in 17th, Roman Belinsky in 18th, Max Hart in 19th, with Antonio Phoenix Acosta in 20th, Elfyn Evans in 21st, Sheldon van der Linde in 22nd, with Kelvin van der Linde in 23rd, Rafael Vidago was in 24th, Ella Lloyd in 25th, and Alex Dunn having to serve his penalty starting at the back of the grid. And then for the first feature race of the day, take it away, Ryan Ferris.
On to the first feature race of the day, and it's one of the hometown heroes, Roman De Angelis, on pole from Raffaele Marcello in second position. And the lights have gone out, and is it going to be a good getaway from the home hero? It's been a poor getaway from Marcello, who's just about managed to fend off Latifi, but steaming down the inside comes Felix Rosenquist. He came out of nowhere there. A few people tripping each other up, and that looks like Ericsson, and that's one of the Team Brazil cars that was in the side of him. So it's Pietro Fittipaldi here. Now he's pretty much minding his own business here, and it looks like he's been shunted there. And it's one of the Mexico cars there. So it was O'Ward who's just shoved Fittipaldi into Ericsson. Fittipaldi just trying to mind his own business there. And then a big punt there from the championship leader. So I think the stewards would be definitely looking at that. But here's Murray's view, who punts into the back of Ericsson, loses his front wing. But Ericsson was okay there until you saw a flying Team Brazil car from Fittipaldi. And Ericsson getting bullied quite a lot there into turn 1. But luckily for him, as he states, no damage. Here's Max Hart's on board. Now he punted slightly into the back of Fittipaldi. And then hits into the back of Murray for good measure and has taken out Murray now. So Murray, who was already in the walls there, had lost his front wing and now has no rear wheel. And I feel the stewards will be spending a lot of time on that, and somehow that's been ruled no further investigation. Max Hart was given a penalty though. As as we look to Felipe Albuquerque, who lines up Latifi into the hairpin, but not quite close enough. Just behind him there is Jose Maria Lopez and teammate Verone in 5th and 6th. But it is De Angelis who leads ahead of Rosenqvist, who, I don't know how, but somehow managed to get the car stopped into turn 1 after sending it there. But down the inside comes Leclerc, that is, on Verone. And Verone potentially running on the heavy side, as he's now instantly under pressure now from Giovinazzi. De Resta, who had that commanding performance in the first race, can he replicate any of that as he sits there in 10th position at the moment? But out at the front, De Angelis leads by 1.6 seconds. So around the hairpins here and onto, the chicanes, and then onto the hairpin. And Rosenqvist is now back under pressure from Marcello. Is Marcello going to have a move into the hairpin as we cut away to Pietro Fittipaldi? And Marcello through into 2nd position, so he now can go about chasing after De Angelis one more time. Nicholas Latifi, who's also going quite well here in 4th position. He's the next to try and find a way through on Rosenqvist, who, after a stellar first lap, is potentially struggling here, so that could suggest he's running quite heavy on his fuel load. Alpha Leclerc sets the fastest lap there in 7th position as he hunts down Jose Maria Lopez for 6th. Rosenqvist just trying to hang in there in 3rd position. It's potentially going to be a long stint, and he's got Latifi there for company. And Villagomez with an issue, so he's having to retire there. And there it is, on smoke. After a great showing out in New Zealand a couple of races back, it's all kind of come back to reality for him now. Although at this time, not quite his fault with a car failure. So De Angelis, who looks to be going along at a steady rate there. He's not pulling out any major margins over Marcello. We know that he's going to be doing a longish stint here in the first part of this race. Marcello 1.6 seconds behind, so managing to take a 10th or 2 out of Marcello each lap. But Latifi's got the next, and there's Max Hart, who's cut the hair at the chicane and has lost part of his front wing. He's already got a penalty to deal with, so that's pretty much Hart's race over, I think. Now he's going to hold up the rest of the field, essentially. Back on board with Marcello, who's trying to hunt down, as here's the battle for 14th and 15th, and O'Ward goes through on Belinsky. Further on back, battles for 20th position there, as once again Team South Africa struggling for pace. Calvin van der Linde in 16th and Sheldon van der Linde in 20th. Antonio Fuchs Costa down in 18th, also struggling. Here's Nicholas Latifi, who's trying to close down on Marcello. Marcello, who's actually taken a couple of attempts out of De Angelis on that last lap. And And Di Resta, who's been relegated down into 11th, potentially going to find himself a bit further back now, as he finds Stefan Rakelmi is going to be climbing all over the back of the Team Scotland car. He just about manages to hang on. Back to Latifi. Rosenqvist is lost out to Albuquerque now. Team unsure of what Latifi's going to be doing strategy-wise. They're still trying to figure out the implications with teammate out front and Latifi showing good pace here. It could be a Team Canada 1-2 here in Canada. Further on back, Leclerc trying to find a way through on Lopez. Lopez catching up onto the back of Rosenqvist, so Rosenqvist still struggling for pace here. He must be considerably heavier than the rest of the field. The gap has come down once more between De Angelis and Marcello. It's now down to 1.3 seconds. 5 laps completed so far of the 35. And Latifi still going at a good pace, but Marcello has just managed to ease his way into this stint. It looks as though it could all come together for a three-way battle for the lead. Now there is Lopez trying to force a move through on Rosenqvist, but he wasn't quite committed enough, and as a result he finds Leclerc closing in on the pair of them. Leclerc's already picked off Verone in this situation. And De Angelis has responded. He's taken a 10th away from Marcello. But this is turning out to be quite the cagey race between the top three. And as he said, Marcello, possibly the salami or pastrami in the Canadian sandwich. But here is Lopez still under pressure now from Arthur Leclerc. And Leclerc well into the slipstream. He's definitely starting to pester the Argentine driver. And he's closing. He's going to go down the inside into the chicane and goes through into 6th position. And that's somewhat wrong-footed. Lopez there, but Lopez tries to fight back. In fact, that's Verone who is trying to go through on Lopez, and in doing so has tripped himself up, and through goes Giovinazzi. Back towards the front, Marcello still trading lap time. It's down to 1.2 between himself and De Angelis. Latifi taking a bit of a watching brief there. 1.4 seconds, or just under 1.4 seconds, is a gap between himself and Marcello. Here's Jakub Smelkowski. Still riding the crest of a wave after his performance in Le Mans. It's now back to Grand Prix World Series and the Nations Cup Championship, which some people will probably say is the World Cup rather than something that involves kicking a bag of wind about. But Smiakowski there in 10th position and on for some good points ahead of DeResta. But meanwhile, Belinsky, his teammate, having a few issues there through the final chicane. And that's going to put him under pressure now from Da Costa. But Da Costa unable to go through into turn 1. But you feel like a move's going to be coming sometime soon for that final points paying position. Further on back, here is Sheldon van der Linde, who finds himself in a bit of a Welsh sandwich here. Evans in P19 and Lloyd in 21st. The battle still continues on at the front. Marcello, was that a little bit of a mistake there for Marcello in the hairpin? He has lost another tenth to De Angelis, and it just seems with each sector, De Angelis is stronger in one area, Marcello's stronger in the other. And Alex Dunn with a lock-up there into the final hairpin before they go down the Casino Straight, as it's called. But Dunn not having the best of races, with Ericsson, who's recovering from that first lap, first corner incident. Still back at the front. De Angelis, Marcello and Latifi all trading jabs at the moment. And Felipe Albuquerque actually starting to look as though he's closing in to make it a four-way battle, albeit they are a bit spaced out. But you feel the way that it's all going to pan out, it's all going to come down to the pit stop strategy. Who's going to manage an overcut or an undercut, which strategy is going to be the strongest? Is having a tyre offset going to be the pivotal factor that wins this race today? Right on board with Leclerc, who's closing in on Rosenqvist for that 5th position. Rosenqvist continues to go backwards, although he's done well to hold on to that 5th position. He's only lost out on a couple of positions now, but he's going to lose out on one more as Leclerc sends it down the inside into turn 1, and it's a brilliant overtake there for the Monegasque driver, who puts himself into 5th position. Now, Rosenqvist has got some margin between himself and Lopez. Lopez and Giovinazzi are squabbling for that 7th position, so if Rosenqvist can just about hang on to the back of Leclerc, get a bit of slipstream, and it may keep him safe before the pit stops. Back at the front, once again in that middle sector, Marcello closes it down to 1.2 seconds. You feel like something is building up here, and it feels like it could be quite the crescendo. Albuquerque is 2 seconds off the back of Latifi. And Latifi 1.3 seconds off the back of Marcello. So we continue on. We're potentially thinking somewhere around the lap 13 to 15 mark we might see our first stoppers of the race. Currently on lap 12. So we look further on back. This is Stefan Rakelmi, who's trying to close in on Smiakowski for 11th position. DeResta has managed to find a way back up into the top 10. the rest of it not quite showing the same level of performance as we saw earlier on in the sprint race. So Marcello being told there is a window to pit now. So the opportunity is there to try and perform an undercut on your race leader, De Angelis. Felipe Albuquerque keeping a watching brief on the top three at the moment. He's got a comfortable advantage at the moment to Leclerc, but Leclerc obviously now released from Rosenqvist and has got the potential. Currently has the fastest lap of the race. So potential there for some more advancement there from Leclerc as he catches, or tries to catch at least, Albuquerque for fourth. And at that point, once again, Marcello making up his time in the middle sector. The closest we've seen the pairing, but he's going to now box. Now, where is that going to bring him out? Albuquerque also comes into pit lane, so does Leclerc. So that will allow Rosenqvist to back through into third. Now, the most important thing for Marcello is where does he come out in comparison to the rest of the field. The last thing he wants to find is himself stuck in traffic. Latifi being told 2 more laps. So, Team Canada hoping that the 2-lap delta will help his challenge against Marcello. Meanwhile, Rosenqvist there, third position, but over 9 seconds away from your race leader. De Angelis having a bit of a luck up there into turns 8 and 9. But as it stands at the moment, Team Canada running first and second here in Canada. Obviously, both cars yet to stop, and we'll see where Marcello feeds out. He's currently sat in 15th position and just under 2 seconds away from Evans there in 14th. So here's Rosenqvist. Was Rosenqvist making a dive for pit lane then? No, it looks as though he is about to go through, and he indeed has gone round for another lap. Raquelme pits from 8th position. So too does DaCosta. Evans now pits in front of Marcello, so that's going to release Marcello, and is now giving him another little buffer of around 3 seconds. So this is working out brilliantly for the Italian driver, and he's well within chance of doing the undercut, but at the same time Latifi has been going about his business in closing the gap to De Angelis. It was 2.7 seconds, it's now 1.9 seconds. Here's Rosenqvist in third position. He's got Lopez not too far behind. Here's Albuquerque, who's not long out of pit lane. And it looks as though he's found himself stuck behind Sheldon van der Linden. And that's not what he wanted in his attempts to try and do the undercut on Latifi, who is pitting this lap. And indeed, he does come into pit lane. De Angelis continues on. But I feel any chance for Albuquerque to try and do the undercut, it's not going to quite work out given the fact that he was stuck in the traffic. Verone has lost his engine. So he is out of the race. But where is... and just there it is. So Latifi just manages to come out in front of Albuquerque. Obviously, Albuquerque with the hotter tyres, Latifi's going to have to spend some time warming him up. So he's going to have to try and defend for his life here, but he looks as though he's getting a good exit there out of turns 3 and 4, and it's not as if Albuquerque's going to be close enough for a move, or is he? On board now with your race leader, DeAngelis, who hasn't stopped yet. Further back there's Alex Dunn, and he's got Leclerc all over the back of him. Leclerc, who has also lost out here due to the traffic. And down the inside goes Leclerc. Albuquerque unable to find a way through on Latifi, and I think Latifi's now being released. But Jose Maria Lopez now finds himself in second position, and so does Paul Di Resta in third. So Di Resta going long, and he's going to hope that he finds some form of overcut or some form of massive tyre delta. Marcello with a big lock up there in 7th position. And there is Latifi just behind him. So Latifi with tyres that are 2 laps younger. Plus the lock up there for Marcello is now going to put himself under quite a bit of pressure. DeAngelis still not pitting, so he may find himself under some form of threat from Marcello and Latifi, but he's going to have much fresher tyres. As we look to Paul Di Resta there in 3rd position. Jose Maria Lopez just up the road. And he comes into pit. Is Di Resta doing the same? Yes, he is. DeAngelis, as you can see, has carried on. So that promotes Felipe Nasr into 2nd. And Calvin van der Linde also into 3rd, so he's yet to stop. But he's got Marcello just behind him as well. And Marcello's going to be getting held up here, and this has allowed Latifi to win 0.3 of a second with Marcello, so this is getting very close here. And there is Marcello. He's potentially going to be receiving some form of dirty air off of the Team South Africa car in front, but obviously the Team South Africa car of Calvin van der Linde is full position. He's not being lapped as he's not stopped yet. But this is potentially causing them some harm. And in comes DeAngelis. So DeAngelis is on his way into pit lane, whilst these two around the final hairpin before they come down the casino straight into the chicane. So DeAngelis is in, and I think given what we saw with Albuquerque and Latifi and how close that was, I think these two may be coming out in front. There you can see DeAngelis, he's exiting pit lane now as they come down the start-finish straight. Where is he going to be? He's just filtering out of pit lane, and that looks like a perfect stop there for DeAngelis, who parks himself on to the first corner and keeps the race lead essentially. Nasr yet to stop. And now DeAngelis with much fresher tyres, providing he doesn't get passed by the hard charging Marcello, who's definitely close to him. Much closer than what we saw from Albuquerque on Latifi. So come down to turns 8 and 9, and it looks as though DeAngelis has just about done enough to hold on to that lead. So Latifi fighting for that position with Marcello. Canada are willing him on. it's not very often we get 1-2s here in the Nations Cup, so for it to happen to Team Canada and at their home circuit, it's going to be something pretty special. But crucially, Latifi needs to find a way through on Marcello. Further back here is Evans fighting for 17th. Felipe Nasr continues on in the lead, so he's going for a very, very long stint. He's going to be hoping that his greater tyre offset is going to allow him to pick his way through the field with some form of ease, but in the background there, as we cut to Jakub Smirakowski, who's battling away for 11th with Stefan Rakelmi. Just behind him is Da Costa. So just outside of the top points, as Nasr now pits from the lead. That now means that our lead trio, as De Angelis sets the fastest lap of the race, and Latifi still unable to find a way through on Marcello. Marcello going on the defensive there into turn 1. He's definitely continuing to harass the Italian. Latifi, who hasn't really shown much pace so far this season. He's struggled quite a lot in his first season here in the Nations Cup, as De Angelis struggling to get it down the box there into turn 8 and 9, but he's got enough of an advantage there. 2.2 seconds is the gap between himself and Marcello, and I think that's still growing. But Marcello under ever more pressure from Latifi. Marcello, who looks as though he's potentially trying to back Latifi into Felipe Albuquerque there in 4th position. You can see in the background there, Leclerc not too far away from Albuquerque as well. And Latifi has another look this time round, but still unable to find a way through on Marcello. All the while, De Angelis is just able to go about his business and just gradually pull away from this battling pair for 2nd and 3rd, although, as we say, Albuquerque could be joining these two sometime soon. Here's Rosenqvist, who has tried the long strategy but has not quite worked out. He's found himself best part of 6 seconds behind Leclerc now for P5. That's a lot of work to do with the rest of this race to go. But as you can see, Albuquerque gradually closing in on the back of Latifi. And here is Pietro Fittipaldi. Is that an issue there, or is that just a missed gear? Still seems to be going, and that's a position lost to Kelvin van der Linde. Kelvin van der Linde obviously on fairly fresh rubber. He was amongst the last to pit. But this definitely looks like it's possibly on into turn 1 now. But still, Latifi unable to find a way through on Marcello. The laps are starting to tick off. There's still plenty of time left for Latifi to find a way through. And as we saw earlier, once Latifi was released, he was actually running quicker than De Angelis. But De Angelis with the tyre offset to Latifi. Don't think Latifi will have much answer for his teammate. Latifi still trying to find a weakness in the armour that is Marcello. Marcello, who's always been incredibly aggressive on both attacking and defending, and he's showing off and continuing to show off his skill here, holding on to his second position ahead of Latifi. Latifi, who's starting to have a little bit of a run once again, but once again still not close enough. And this is definitely meaning that Albuquerque is able to close in. Further on back, I think that was a move for position there. Lopez going ahead of Giovinazzi for 7th. Or in actual fact, I think that might have also been the rest going through on Riquelme. Issues there for Elvin Evans going through turn 1 and 2. And not the best of weekends at all for Team Wales. After showing good signs in previous races, it just seems as though the setup choice hasn't quite worked out for them this weekend. Now, Latifi has lost a little bit of time here to Marcello. Obviously, we saw in the first half of the race Marcello was very good through that middle sector. It just seems as though the Team Canada car has got the first and the third sector wrapped up, but the Team Italy car working much better through that middle sector. And Di Resta making a move there, or trying to get through on Giovinazzi for 8th position. Obviously Di Resta on very new tyres compared to a lot of those in front of him. It seems as though Latifi is starting to lose a little bit of touch there with Marcello. Is he having a little bit of a breather now? The gap 0.8 of a second between Marcello and Latifi. And he's going to want to be careful, as Latifi is now 1.4 seconds away from Albuquerque there in 4th. Here's Jakub Smiakowski in 11th position as he tries to hunt down Riquelme for that 10th position. Back at the front, De Angelis continues to extend his advantage. Nearly 4 seconds it is between himself and Marcello. With 10 laps remaining. Doesn't want to push too hard. We saw what happened to Estra in the sprint race, and he was very lucky to finish. But on board now, as we're on board with Latifi, who looks back to Felipe Albuquerque. Latifi's staying just about within that 0.8 of a second to Marcello. And actually, he's gone outside of a second. So he's lost the toe to Marcello. But all it would take is a mistake from Marcello, and Latifi will be right back on him again. Marcello putting on a solid performance here. . He continues to extend his advantage to Latifi, but this is the middle sector where that Team Canada car doesn't quite work as well as the Team Italy car, but he's managed to just about duck inside that crucial 1 second in the first sector. Looks as though he's possibly lost out again just outside of that second. But Albuquerque not quite making the inroads that we thought he would. Here's Ella Lloyd now under pressure from Max Hart for the 22nd position, although Hart with that penalty from the start of the race. I was about to say Albuquerque now, after feeling like he was the hunter for Latifi, he's now become the hunted, and Leclerc within a second now. DeAngelis enjoying his time in front of the home crowd as he continues to extend his advantage. Over 5 seconds it is now between himself and Marcello, and I feel Marcello hasn't really got much to respond with. The only thing he's got to try and think about now is holding on to that P2 ahead of Latifi, who's still ebbing and flowing away on the lap times. 1 minute he's outside of the second, and next minute he's just about inside. But the threat from Albuquerque behind has pretty much gone away now. But as I said earlier, Leclerc hunting down Albuquerque. It was within a second earlier, but Albuquerque's obviously responded. We look back from Marcello's car to Latifi. Latifi within the second. DeAngelis, who's always put on some fairly decent performances. It's mostly been down to his late race pace that he always seems to shine, but he's pretty much shone from the start. There's still a few laps remaining of this race. Further on back, here's Jose Maria Lopez, who's closing in on Rosenquist, who we thought was potentially going to have some degree of pace in the latter part of this race, but Rosenquist has pretty much stayed put since the pit stops. So Lopez hunting down for that P6. Here's Di Resta, who at one point thought he had a way through on Giovinazzi, but is unable to find that way through, even though he's on much fresher tyres than the Italian driver. Raquelme currently rounds out the top 10 with Smikowski in 11th, and has got Felipe Nasr, who was the last driver to pit and is on much fresher rubber. So expect to potentially see Nasr up into the top 10 by the end of this race. First, he has to pick off the Polish driver in front, and he's not quite close enough to make a move into the final chicane. front. And Latifi starting to lose touch now of Marcello. But we look further back as Nazar continues to pester the Polish driver in front of him, of Smikowski. Definitely seems as though that Team Brazil car is working well through the corners, but the Team Poland car seems to have the legs down the straights. Here's Roman Belinsky in 14th position, so on for a couple of points there. And Nazar is through on Smikowski, and Rakalmi is just a little bit ahead, so a few laps remain, but there is definitely an opportunity here for Nazar to take a top 10 position. Back on board with your race leader. So we cut to Lopez, who has a big lock up there. Manages to scoop it up though and avoid the wall on the exit of turn 4. And that's allowed Giovinazzi to catch up onto the back of him. So out front, De Angelis, 5.8 seconds is the advantage. Marcello, who's opened the gap out now to Latifi. So, barring any mistakes or incidents, this is most likely going to be your top 3. 3 to go. And potentially not going to get that glorious 1-2, but we'll still have 2 Canadians on the podium. And there's a large chance that one of them is going to go out and win this race today. Through the very tricky middle sector for Marcello, and still continuing to open up the gap between himself and Latifi. Latifi, though, fairly comfortable, as Albuquerque just hasn't had that pace that we thought he might do, as O'Ward, who's outside the points at the moment, down in P16, struggling through turns 3 and 4, and as you can see, no one really in sight for him to pass, so he's going to hope there's some form of retirement in front of him over these last couple of laps, because he's not going to be going away with any points here in this sprint race. Further back here is Calvin van der Linde, who ran a late call and a late strategy, and it's paid out somewhat. He's found himself picking up a solitary point at the moment, and the gap up ahead seems just a little bit too long for him to catch up and score any more points, so he'll most likely be happy with the point anyway. Team South Africa have struggled a lot this weekend, as Alex Dunn gets it all wrong coming out of the final chicane. Still lives on. So Marcello keeping a fairly steady ship at the moment. No signs of Latifi closing. And it looks as though Alvin Evans with an issue. Evans, who was outside of the points, so didn't really matter too much, but a retirement there for the Welsh driver. And that's Award. So Award has come to a halt as well. Your championship leader, who has struggled all weekend here, finds his way not even getting into the points, and was compounded on what has been a bad day here at Canada. His car has give up the ghost. But one car who hasn't given up the ghost yet on this final lap is DeAngelis. Now, still not too early, as we saw with Kevin Estra in the first race, but I feel that if the car was to go wrong now, he'd still have enough power and enough steam to get his way to the finish. The home crowd getting on their feet as DeAngelis has only got 2 corners to go, the final chicane. He's just got to navigate the corner, avoid the wall of champions, which he does so. And across the line comes Roman DeAngelis to win here at home in Montreal. Raffaele Marcello manages to come through in second, with Latifi in third. And it's 2 Team Canada cars on the podium. So a great result there on home soil. Rosenqvist managing to hang on there in 6th as the rest of the field come through. The rest are unable to get through on Giovinazzi, which is, I think he'll be a bit disappointed with there, although he has scored some decent points nonetheless. We just wait for Ericsson, Hart and Lloyd to come across the line. And here they come. So, race over, and we look to the confirmation that Roman DeAngelis wins here on home soil here in Montreal. Raffaele Marcello was second, and Nicholas Latifi was third. Felipe Albuquerque came in 4th, with Arthur Leclerc 5th, Felix Rosenqvist in 6th, Jose Maria Lopez 7th, Antonio Giovinazzi 8th, De Resta was 9th, Stefan Ricalmi rounding out the top 10 with Felipe Nasr coming through to 11th, Smirkowski was 12th ahead of Antonio Felix Costa in 13th. Moving further on down, it was Roman Bielinski in 14th, with Calvin van der Linde taking the final point there in 50th, just ahead of Pietro Fittipaldi. Sheldon van der Linde was 17th ahead of Alex Dunn, Marcus Ericsson 19th, and Ella Lloyd finishing there in 20th. Max Hart with the penalty there coming through in 21st. Pato Award was classified, although was 2 laps down as a result of that retirement. Alvin Evans was also classified, but the non-classified drivers was Nico Verone, Rafael Villa Gomez and Sebastian Murray. So a lot of drama there and a lot of suspense there in that Division 2 race, and I'll hand you over to Chris, who will take you through into Division 1.
What an impressive display from Roman DeAngelis for Canada at his home turf. To do that, what a fantastic drive. Raffaele Marcello literally stopping a 1-2 from happening. Well done to him. And some fantastic drives. Arthur Leclerc, for example, did pretty well, I think, considering getting to 5th. And Felix Rosenqvist getting some great points, considering that Pato Award getting nothing, and potentially Pato Award could have a penalty over him should someone appeal the decision of the no further action. And we can see what the standings look like now after this feature race, and indeed Roman DeAngelis takes the lead on 87 points for Canada. He is now 10 clear of Jose Maria Lopez, and then Felipe Nasr is just 11 behind Roman DeAngelis in 3rd place. Pato Award is 15 points behind. He'll be a bit disappointed with that, but Felix Rosenqvist, his rival last year, right behind him. And a lot of fantastic results and a lot of brilliant drives. Felipe Albuquerque in 4th gets himself now to 11th place in the standings. But then there are still some people who are feeling lackluster. For example, the Rafael Villa Gomez, after a great start in Vanuatu, is now fading again, and the Island cars wish they could do something about their performances, and that's evident when you look at the nation standings. Ireland are at the bottom on 41 points, but Canada now in charge on 111 points. Mexico 17 back on 94. Monaco now are in third place. Who would have thought it? But now they were helped by BOP. I think that might hamper them at the next race. But then Sweden in fifth. They got lucked out of the the promotion last season. They'll want to make sure they get in it, but it is so close in the points. 26 points covers the top 6. It is very, very close. We can now look forward to the final race of the day, which is a Division 1 feature race, and I can tell you that René Rast of Germany starts on pole. Let's see if he can convert for those oh so precious points and prizes for Germany. Kevin Magnussen in second place, with Kevin Estre in third, Pascal Wehrlein in fourth, so very close for the Germans at the top. Alex Palou in fifth, with Will Power in sixth, Stoffel Van Dorn in seventh place, with Carl Kirkwood in eighth, Kamima Kobayashi in ninth, with Shane Van Gisbergen in 10th place. Christian Lundgaard in 11th, with Robin France in 12th. Sebastian Buemi, he would have been in 8th place, but he has to serve that 5-place grid penalty. He starts in 13th. Philip Hansen in 14th. Scott Dixon in 15th. So Simon Pagenaud in 16th, with Charles Mostert in 17th. Daniel Jungedale in 18th, and Nick De Vries in 19th. Charles Weerts for Belgium in 20th, with Yuki Tsunoda in 21st. Sandy Stuvik for Thailand now back in 22nd place, with Ugo Ugochukwu in 23rd, and then Jake Dennis in 24th, Louis Delatraz in 25th, and Enzo Tarnavinichkal in 26th. And now for the final race of the day, it is back to Ryan Ferris.
It's time for the final race of the day. It is Division 1 feature race here in Montreal, and it's René Rast on pole from Kevin Magnussen. And as we wait for all the lights to come on, it's racing here in Montreal for the final time. It's a good getaway there from René Rast. Magnussen getting a little bit bogged down there, and here comes Estre having a look down the inside, but he's still holding on to that third position. Further on back, there's more shenanigans as we've seen all day today, and that's Simon Pagenaud that looks to have a front wing missing. So Pagenaud looks as though he got punted from behind and then goes into the back of one of the Team Switzerland cars. So he's complaining that one of the British cars, that looks to be Hansen, punts into the back, but it looks like it was a bit more than just Hansen. I think there's a massive concertina effect there going into turn 1. But Hansen is given a penalty for it, so fairly harsh standings at the moment from the stewards, but they seem to be frowning upon some of these incidents that are happening at turn 1. Further on back, Pagenaud still limping away with half his front wing missing. It's going to be a long day for the Frenchman. Back of the front, the battle is starting to continue. René Rast leading from Magnussen, and Magnussen's had a bit of a regroup there, and he's tucked up well within the slipstream. Estre in the background, who is currently tied in the championship for first with Shane Van Gisbergen. Palou, with that poor performance in the sprint, has lost his championship lead. Not Palou, the Mexican. Oh, Ward, there we go, we got there eventually. So, coming round, completing the first lap of the race. And nothing too major other than Pagenaud losing part of his front wing. But at the front has been fairly clean. Wehrlein starting to close up onto the back end of Estre. It looks as though he's going to be sizing Estre up for a move, most likely into the hairpin. So we look back to Estre and Wehrlein jinks out to the inside. Ooh, thought better of it. Verline running lighter than Estra, and he's going to have another shot down into the chicane, but I don't think he's going to be quite close enough. Through they go one more time, but he's still close to potentially have a move into turn 1. He's closing quite rapidly. He's going for the outside, but that's not going to work. Estra goes on the defensive and then shuts the door. Magnussen, who's just about fell out of that crucial 1 second between himself and Rast now. But he's got a 1 second advantage between himself and Estra. But Verline trying to take that 3rd place away from the Frenchman. Verline thinks better of trying to move into the hairpin this time around. Is he going to try and set something up? But Estra getting a good launch off the hairpin there. So Verline unable to do something, I suspect, into the final chicane. So Rast clocks off another lap in the lead. Estra still holding on to that 3rd place ahead of Verline. So Rast and Magnussen going similar distances, fueled similarly. So this is not particularly looking great for Verline at the moment, who we already know is fueled lighter. So he needs to try and find a way through on Estra as soon as possible. We'll look further back to Lundgaard, his teammate, who's there in 11th position. He's just dropped off the back end of Van Dorn for a top 10 position. Buemi's just behind, who had to serve a grid place penalty for his turn 1 incident in the sprint. Further on back, here's Dixon making a move on Kobayashi for 13th position. So Dixon on the move. And whilst all that's been going on, Verline has gone through on Estra. So 3rd position for the German. Now he can go about trying to close in on Magnussen. And he's already put a good few car lengths between himself and Estra. Carrying on board with Rast. So we come down into the hairpin, continuing to gradually eke out the gap between himself and Magnussen. Verline trying to close in on Magnussen. He's definitely dropped as Hansen goes down the inside. Try and make up another position, and that puts him into 16th ahead of De Vries. Oh, and a little bit of an issue there. Getting it all wrong through both turns 1 and 2. That's going to allow Magnussen to close in a little bit. But carries on. Magnussen, who has definitely got Verline closing in now. Verline's put a second into Estra. And a bit like what we almost had in the Division 2 race, and there's smoke in the distance, is there? And it's Robin Fryns from 9th position. So out he crashes and goes back across the course. So he was already retiring and just loses it, punts it into the barriers. I don't know how he didn't manage to collect anyone. And the marshal was quickly to get him out of the way there, and it was confirmation of an engine failure for the Dutch driver. Still at the front, the gap as a result of that mistake into turns 1 and 2 is down to 1.6. It was 1.9, but Wehrlein gradually bringing that gap down between himself and Magnussen. It's below a second. Estra just keeping a watching brief in the background. No real challenge from Power. Well, they're still not too far away. Power and Kirkwood having a little battle there for P5. So we look to Alex Palou, who finds himself in 8th position. He's trying to close in on Shane van Gisbergen, your joint championship leader. It looks as though Buemi's lining up Lundgaard for a move here into the hairpin, but not quite close enough this time around. Whilst that was going on, it looks as though it looks to be Dixon who's all over the back of Weerts now. So he's dispatched of Kobayashi earlier on, as did he pass Hansen. He's now trying to find a way through on the Belgian driver. Gap at the front starting to creep down slightly. It's now 1.5 seconds between rest. And he's responded to Wehrlein. It's now back out to a second. Here's Daniel Adair trying to fend off Jake Dennis for 21st position. And that's Delatraz having a glance at the wall there. He's lucky not to have any damage. Back at the front, and it looks as though that gap is gradually coming down for sure. Or is that my eyes just deceiving me? Is Uguchu getting it all wrong through turns 8 and 9 there, but luckily for him, he's got quite a considerable margin between himself and Delatraz down in 20th position. And Rast has actually responded. He's put the gap out to 1.7, so I wonder if Magnussen has made a bit of a mistake in that final sector, as Wehrlein has managed to close in on Magnussen, so that kind of would explain everything. And Tarn down in 24th position, struggling for grip as he comes through the final chicane. But very like what we saw in the Division 2 race, it is very much a 3-way, possibly a 4-way fight if Estra can do anything in the pit stops. And it just seems as though these three are just doing a little bit of sparring at the moment, just a few minor jabs until we get to the main pit stop phase. Run back here is Sebastian Buemi. He did manage to get through on Lundgaard. He's now chasing down Van Dorn for 9th position. Further on back, Charvitz still not letting Dixon through. Here is Pagenaud on the recovery. He's most likely going to have to pit again, so pretty much a test session for the French driver. And Rast has managed to open up that gap to 2.1 seconds between himself and Magnussen. And now Magnussen is starting to fall into the clutches of Pascal Wehrlein. The gap 0.7 of a second between himself and Wehrlein. We continue to ride on board down the Cassio Strait, but Wehrlein still not quite close enough for a move. But if he continues to be consistent in his pace at the moment, you may find he'll be in a position to make the move, I think, some point in the next couple of laps. But obviously we know that Wehrlein is potentially going to be amongst the first to pit. Providing he comes out with limited traffic, he has got the opportunity here, depending on how far these two are going to go, to leapfrog the pair of them. Oh, and there's definitely a lockup or an engine blowout there. I think it was just a lockup there from Van Gisbergen. That's going to give Palou a bit of a sniff, but still not quite close enough. And the engine has gone for Pagenaud, so what has already been a painful day for him so far, he's probably glad about the fact that it's come to an early end. And disappointing once again for Pagenaud. He has showed signs of some of the form that he had from last season that won him the championship, but definitely miles off of his younger teammate. So René Rast definitely into the groove now. He's gone back to what it was at the start of the race, where he was taking a tenth here and there each lap, and the gap is now out to 2.4 seconds between himself and Magnussen. Magnussen still trying to respond to Wehrlein, not really allowing him much more than 7 or 8 tenths closer to him. Again, Estra pretty much in no man's land at the moment there, because Power is nowhere near him. Power's somewhat managed to drop Kirkwood behind him. He's still just about within a second as Lundgaard. Another one struggling a bit there through turns 8 and 9. So he tries to come to terms with finding a way through on Van Dorn. Still at the front. Magnussen keeping the gap pretty much the same to Wehrlein, and in fact he's actually closed a little bit on Rast, so as long as he can kind of keep the gap as it is, as Wehrlein gets it all wrong, going through 3 and 4, bit of a lockup there. Luckily, unlike Buemi earlier, or able to keep it out of the wall and continue. That has put him out of the slipstream of Magnussen in front, and it has somewhat brought Estra into play now. carry on. Verline, who obviously managed to make his way through Estra, and we thought he'd managed to go through on Magnussen, but obviously that mistake, as Power is the first one to pit on lap 13, as too does Palou. Further on back, here's Philip Hansen with a bit of a lock-up. Obviously Hansen with a penalty for that first corner collision. But back at the front, Rene Rast, 2.3 seconds. So Magnussen keeping him honest. So I say that he takes another couple tenths away from Magnussen in that middle sector. Now here's a battle going on here. This is Lundgaard, Weerts and Dixon. And Van Dorn goes to pit lane. So too does Dixon. And it's a failure there for Estra. Estra, who thought he was going to find himself in a decent position to fight for the podium today. The first French car has gone bang, and now so too does the second one. And a disappointing day to what was looking quite positive for Team France. So we ride on board now with Pascal Wehrlein, and you can see Magnussen out in the distance. And this time round, they're going to go for the undercut. So Wehrlein in from third position. Rast and Magnussen continue on up the road, and Rast adding another tenth to his advantage. Further on back, here's Shane van Gisbergen, who's now coming under pressure now from Sebastian Buemi, and that's Jake Dennis with a failure there by the looks of things. It looks like the suspension's gone on it. You can see it sort of not quite sat properly, and it is indeed a suspension failure. So Wehrlein has filtered out into 12th position, and he's got a few seconds between himself and Delatraz in 11th. As down the inside goes Buemi for 4th. Buemi, who apparently is lapping better than the leaders at the moment. He's probably kicking himself that he was involved in that first corner incident, because he'd find himself a little bit further up in this race. But Carl Kirkwood comes to pit. Your two leaders carry on. And Buemi also carries on in third. Rast continuing to extend his advantage over Magnussen, 2.8 seconds. And it could be a matter of who... And Dixon's on fire now. So Dixon, who definitely had some decent race pace today, had a lot of work to do. And he parks himself on pit entry, so that's going to come... Luckily, everyone's not having to pit, but it looked very close. Magnussen, or Rast, I'm assuming, has made a slight mistake there because he's lost 2 tenths in that middle sector, but he's now found another tenth. Magnussen is going to pit this lap, and Rast carries on. So will Magnussen perform some form of undercut? And that's Kobayashi. Kobayashi, his engine has gone. And they really seem to be dropping like flies in this middle part of the race. But here is your race leader. I assume he's potentially going to pit this time around. We may go for an extra lap, but the longer he stays out, the more he finds himself under pressure from Magnussen. But it will mean he will have a tyre offset. So Germany are indeed pitting to cover off Magnussen, and Kobayashi finally comes to a stop. So Van Gisbergen also carries on. Buemi carries on and takes the lead for the time being. But importantly, we're wanting to see where Rast comes out in comparison to the likes of Wehrlein and Magnussen. Wehrlein's actually leapfrogged Magnussen whilst all this has been going on. And here is Rast. He's exited the pit lane. I think in the background you can just about see there's Magnussen ahead, or behind, sorry, Pascal Wehrlein. So Rast has come out and he's got Chaz Mostert in between himself and the other two drivers he's battling against. But Magnussen will be on much fresher tyres than Wehrlein in front. And this has not worked out how Magnussen would have wanted. Wehrlein, who's definitely getting held up a little bit here by Mostert. This is putting him under pressure now from Magnussen, who thought he was close enough for a move but decided against it. And it just seems like that Team Germany car able to get off the corners much quicker than Magnussen can. Here's Buemi, who continues on to lead in this race. Lundgaard's now pitted. Mostert finally goes into the pit lane, and that's released Wehrlein. And already he's started to put a couple of car lengths between himself and Magnussen. But Rast already with a 2.5 second advantage over Wehrlein. So Buemi is coming into pit, and he will have some of the freshest tyres of the field, with a massive offset compared to some of the others. Further on back, here's Carl Kirkwood battling with power and manages to finally go through. These two have been at it for quite a long time, but towards the end of that first stint it seemed as though power had the better of the American driver, but this time round obviously feeling those tyres a little bit more. So Buemi and Van Gisbergen have pitted from first and second. That's allowed Rast, Wehrlein and Magnussen to come through and retake first, second and third. Buemi has managed to filter out in 5th position, so a good stint there. But he's going to try and, well, he's going to have to close in and pass Kirkwood as soon as possible if he wants any chance of a podium today. He's got a lot of work to do with 15 laps remaining. Magnussen, although he has got younger tyres than Wehrlein, unable to do anything about it as Wehrlein has a lock-up there into the hairpin. Buemi is indeed through on Kirkwood, so he's up into 4th. And has a 5-second gap between himself and Magnussen. Rast being told about Buemi's pace, I think it's a bit... I don't think it's quite possible Buemi's going to close 10 seconds down on Rast in the 15 laps remaining. It would have to be a mere miracle. But someone on the German pit wall seems to be quite optimistic there. Rast has just got to carry on doing what he's been doing all race so far. He's had no real threat from behind. But now he has his teammate Wehrlein, who, as I say, is on much older tyres than Rast and yet still able to lap faster than Magnussen. And Magnussen has really tailed off now. And you can see Buemi in the background. Magnussen not gelling with these tyres, it seems. Whereas Wehrlein, on older tyres, as Sebastian Buemi sets the fastest lap of the race, is just able to drive away from Magnussen. But at the same time, his teammate Rast has now opened up a further 1.2 seconds over Wehrlein, compared to what it was when they all finished having their pit stops. But for Magnussen, it seems as though the Jaws music is starting to play. As you can see, Buemi getting ever closer. Further back, here's Van Gisbergen, who wasn't that far behind Buemi in the pit stops, but you can see the difference a few seconds have made in this race and how close the rest of the field are as he finds himself down in 11th position. Rast continuing to put the hammer down with these final dozen laps to go. Continues to open up his advantage to his teammate Wehrlein, but as it stands at the moment, we're on course for a German 1-2, and with the awful start Germany has had this season, very much similar to the start of the season they had last season, but I think it's been a little bit more rough for them so far. This is turning out to be a very good performance for Team Germany. It's going to be a decent haul of points, so it's going to help them with their championship challenge. Buemi sounding as though he's channeling his inner Daniel Ricciardo a bit there, and is definitely on the hunt here And I think in his mind, more than just a podium, he's on for the win. Unless Lady Luck has something to say about it. Further on back, that's Van Dorn going through on Palou for 7th position. Lundgaard trying to do the same, and it's very much all together through here. We've got Palou all the way back to Hansen in 12th in this battle. Ugachuk's pitted, so I think there must be an issue there for the American. But Palou seeming to be the cork in the bottle. As you can see, Van Dorn is just cleared off up the road here. Back on board with René Rast, who has a 4.2 second advantage over Wehrlein. But if you see the gap now, it was over 10 seconds between Rast and Buemi. It's now down to 7.7. But Buemi does have 2 more cars to get through before he gets to Rast. The first one being Magnussen, which he is closing in on quite rapidly. The gap is now down to a second between these two. Wehrlein, whose tyres must be getting pretty tired right now. And Van Gisbergen has to box, he's got an issue. Disappointing stuff for Team New Zealand. Dixon was running well, Van Gisbergen was running well. But Van Gisbergen's not out of this yet, and he has got enough time potentially to try and make up some ground. But back towards the front for that battle for P3, and Buemi's definitely closer. And providing you can get a good exit out of the hairpin, which Magnussen is able to actually get away a little bit better there. But Buemi looks as though he's close enough. He's potentially going to do a move. If it's not here, it's going to be down into the first corner. As Wehrlein gets it all wrong through the final chicane. And that's potentially those tyres that have been on much longer than anyone else here. And Buemi has a look down the inside, but unable to get through. This is crucial timing here for the Swiss driver. As he continues to close up, is he going to have a move here into the chicane? He's definitely close enough for one, but the braking zone not quite long enough to make a move, but he's going to be close enough here for a look down into turn 8 and 9. He put a move on Van Gisbergen earlier, and it looks like he's going to do a move here into the corner, and through goes Buemi on Magnussen. Now, after all that, he's not lost too much time. It was 7.7, and it's actually gone down to 7.3 to himself and the leader. Wehrlein obviously making life a little bit easier for Buemi, having made that lock-up into this final corner here. Further on back, here's Palou continuing to go backwards here. Hansen going down the inside. That doesn't matter too much because Hansen does have that penalty. And Rast getting it all wrong through the final corner. Is Rast starting to feel the pressure? He's still got a few laps remaining, and he's still got his tail gunner in Wehrlein as Mostert tries to find a way through on Yuki Tsunoda. And Rast making another mistake there. This time into turns 6 and 7. Further on back, Buemi is nearly within a second of Wehrlein. Further back here is De Vries sending it down the inside of Palou. This time taking P11 away from the Spanish driver. And for a driver who's been seeing dominant success in IndyCar, it's not quite going his way here in the Nations Cup. Here is Wehrlein, who's managed to hold on to that second advantage between himself and Buemi. So he's had a bit of a regroup here. But throughout that lap, Rast has lost a second to Wehrlein. It was over 5 seconds, the gap between Wehrlein and Rast. But Buemi is going to have to try and make a move sometime soon if he wants to try and fight this out for the lead against Rast. The laps are starting to tick down. Buemi, who's definitely within that crucial second now of Wehrlein, so he's going to be picking up a healthy tow down the Casino straight into the final corner. He's not going to be close enough for a move. I don't think he'll even be close enough for a move into turn 1, so I think, if anything, he's going to try and line up his favourite move into turn 8 and 9. Further on around the lap. But he's going to have to be clinical. Rast, who seems to add a little bit of a regroup, he's pulled another couple tenths out of his teammate. And as we see in the background, here's Buemi. Is he going to have a move? No, he's not quite close enough this time. But can he do anything into the hairpin? He's definitely close enough this time. And out he comes. He pops to the inside of the corner. He tries to do the brakes down the inside. And through goes Buemi into second position. Now, he's got a lot of work to do. And about 5 laps to do it. I think he potentially needs another mistake from Rast if he's got any chance of doing this. But Rast down into turn 1. No issues there this time. And team manager Topher Smith is potentially going to be getting quite tense now. That 1-2's gone, but there's still the chance for the win. And it's still looking fairly high at the moment. Further on back, this is a battle between Power and Lundgaard for P6. Power was overtaken by Kirkwood, and Kirkwood's just dropped Power in this second part of the race. And interestingly, Magnussen still just hasn't had the pace in this second part of the race, even though he has got younger tyres. As Lundgaard goes down the inside and definitely has a lunge there, gets it all wrong, but somehow holds on to the position. I don't think Power will be very happy about that. And in doing so, that's cost both of them a bit of time, and Van Dorn, who's been on a bit of a charge here, is starting to close on this pair. His teammate Charles Weerts is also there. The gap has gone down by nearly a second on that last lap. So laps continue to tick down. Wehrlein fairly comfortable now in his third position. Barring any mistakes or any major tyre drop off, he should be okay. As Danny Juncker has small issue there going through the final chicane. He's stuck in between the two Thai drivers. But unable to really make any inroads into the points. And gets it all wrong there going through the chicane. Gap at the front is down to 2.3 seconds, so what's happened to Rast? The gap was 4.5, it was 3, then down to 3.5 or 3.6 actually across the line. And from going across the line to halfway around the lap, it's now down to 2.3, so the opportunity is there as they come across the line. 3 laps remaining. And is that a back marker I can see ahead? Or are my eyes deceiving me? No, it's just my mistake. We're looking at the wrong German car. That is Wehrlein we're looking at there. Gap continuing to come down between Rast and Buemi. It seems as though Buemi, also Rast, through that middle sector, is just able to keep the time the same as it is, but Buemi making up the time on the other two. Across the line at 1.7 seconds. 2 laps remaining. Has Rast done enough? He cannot afford a mistake, otherwise that will mean Buemi will be all over him. And it's down to a second, so Rast in that first sector, he must be incredibly weak there through that first sector, because as you can see, it's 1.7 seconds, now down to 0.8 with a lap and a half remaining. So Buemi well within the slipstream. He needs to be a bit closer if he wants to try and make a move. To come through the final chicane to start the final lap of what has been an enthralling Division 1 feature race. Rast has responded. He's put the gap out to 0.9 of a second. Barring any mistakes, although as we've seen he's lost a lot of time through this first sector, but it looks to be going quite well for him at the moment. He's still held on. He's still 0.6 ahead of ahead of Buemi. Buemi needs to be a little bit closer if he wants to try and make a move here on this final lap. And that German car is very strong out of that hairpin, so if he can hold on through the hairpin, which indeed he does, he's only got the straight to go and a chicane, and René Rast will be the winner of this race, most certainly. So just the chicane to go, barring any mistakes from Rast. He rounds the final corner, no issues there, and René Rast comes to take the checkered flag and wins the Division 1 feature race here in Montreal. A brilliant fight back though from Buemi, who started outside the top 10. Wehrlein holding on to much older tyres, manages to make it a Germany 1-3. The rest of the field filter on through. None of the Belgium cars were able to get through on power in the end, and Palou finds himself going backwards to 13th. We wait for the rest of the field to come through. Stuvik, Juncker, Tarn. Just behind that is Van Gisbergen, obviously recovering from his issues. And the last to come along through is Ugo Chugu. But there's your race winner. And we wait for the confirmation that indeed René Rast wins here in Montreal ahead of Sebastian Buemi and Pascal Wehrlein. Kevin Magnussen came fourth, followed by Carl Kirkwood, Christian Lundgaard, Will Power, Stoffel Van Dorn, Charles Weerts, Nick de Vries, Louis Delatraz, Alex Palou and Chaz Mostert in 13th. It was Yuki Tsunoda in 14th and Sandy Stuvik taking the final point with Danny Yuki 16th. 17th was Enzo Tarn, Shane Van Gisbergen 18th, Ugo Uchukwu in 19th, and Philip Hansen with that penalty puts himself in 20th. And on to the retirements was Kobayashi, Dixon, Dennis, Estra, Pagenaud and Robin Frines. And after an enthralling final race of the day, I'll hand you back over to Chris.
What a thrilling end to the Division 1 feature race. Well done, René Rast, only just holding on from a fast charging Sebastian Buemi from 13th place and was quite clearly the fastest car on the track. Oh, he wishes he was starting in 8th instead, because that was incredible. But again, well done to Germany for converting a win and getting 2 cars on the podium, which is quite difficult to do in Nations Cup, and to do that is absolutely fantastic. The Danes being 4th and 6th is another fantastic result, and there'll be some teams naturally worrying from that one, which are the 2 French cars, Estra and Pagenaud, both going out quite quickly in the race, which is very disappointing. And then the England cars having their own issues, which is very disappointing as well. But we can see what the driver's standings looks like. And yeah, Shane Van Gisbergen and Kevin Estra are locked together on 66 points. Shane Van Gisbergen goes ahead because he gets a race win. And then Nick de Vries only 3 points back for Netherlands in 63 points. And Christian Lundgaard only 7 points back. It is oh so close right down the order. One race winner's worth 25 points. So from 12th to 1st, it is so close. René Rast now puts himself in that conversation at 12th place. Very, very well driven. And there are, again, Simon Pagenaud, title defender, only on 22 points. I wonder if the French team will think about something regarding that. That'd be quite a bitter pill to swallow indeed. But we can see now what the standings looks like for Division 1. New Zealand are on top on 101 points, with Australia only 2 back on 99 points, which is incredible, and Denmark on 92 points as well. This field is oh so close. France and Netherlands are both locked on 88, with Switzerland on 87. Spain and Belgium are both locked on 82, and Germany now on 79 points. It is anyone's game in that order. Let's see if the USA and England and Thailand can do something about that. Well, that is round 5 at Montreal done and dusted, and now we can look forward to the next race, which is going to be at Laguna Seca in Monterey in California, United States of America. That's a fan favourite, that circuit. Let's see what that can bring for the Nations Cup for its debut there. We've seen it a lot on Grand Prix World Series, but we get to see it for the Nations Cup, same day, same time, in a fortnight's time. And, well, thank you all so much for listening and watching this race. I am Chris Kavanagh, your host. Ryan Ferris has been your commentator, and this is the Nations Cup, signing off.